Welcome back to the first Friends of Constructed Adventures live interview in 2021. I took a small break in November and December just because breaks are awesome and everybody should. As we lead up to Valentine's Day, I really wanted to get romantic, and so I asked my friend Heather Vaughn, who's the founder of the Yes Girls, which is the original proposal planning company, to join me and talk about the do's and don'ts, basically best practices. I am hearing a bit of an echo. I might need myself to. There we go. Huh. I had my own video on and that really threw me off. But without further ado, I'm going to bring in Heather and we're going to talk about proposals. Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Oh man, I just threw myself through such a loop because I can hear everything in my headphone and I had
Oh yeah, that's very distracting. I have definitely been there. I'm glad you fixed
we're
it.
off to a great start. Perfect. So, first and foremost, just why don't you introduce yourself, talk about your company, and just kind of give everybody the basic information and the elevator pitch.
Yeah, of course. So, as you mentioned, my name is Heather Vaughn, and I founded the Yes Girls in 2008 when I had just freshly graduated college. It was not the most economical time in in the business world. So it was really, really hard to get hired in events. Most people are just trying to keep their job. So it was a little bit of a risk to try to start an event planning company during that time. But pretty much that was it ended up being this huge blessing because there wasn't a proposal planning company out there. So it really gave me the opportunity to kind of figure out what the industry could be and look like. And so fast forward to 12 years now, which I can't believe it's been 12 years. A few kids later, and the whole thing. We have planned over 3,000 custom proposals, and the whole reason why I started the company in the first place, and really the heartbeat of the company, is that we plan personalized proposals. So we want it to always be about the couple's love story instead of something like an insert here scenario. We really want it to be catered to the couple. And so that translated into helping with date nights and anniversaries. And we've even had people come to like re-propose and things like that. So it's been really, really fun. I love those. I love those. So
Yeah.
but that's kind of the gist of kind of where I started and what we're doing now. We've launched a few products to kind of help with relationships and the proposal and all that since then.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. Actually, there's a lot of people kind of active in the chat. I'll just kind of throw some people up here that are just like, I'm excited for this. Like, I thought this was on Friday. So I'll kind of add these in. Hi, Megan. Hi, Chris. Hi, Anthony. And anybody else. So if you have any questions during this whole thing for either myself or Heather, in regards to honestly anything, but we're going to try to keep this with like proposals and romance, please
Yeah.
don't hesitate to throw them out. I will find a time to add them in our conversation. And so I'm going to go ahead and just start with the very basic background, which is what your life path is, like how you got into this today. Because I graduated about the same time,
Okay.
like right during the crash, and oh man, I didn't become an event planner until 5 years ago, and so it was a much better time to do that than right after that. So how did you start? How long was it a side hustle? Like, did you just do one
Yeah.
for a friend and then fall in love with it?
So I knew I always wanted to be in the wedding industry. Like I was a strange, strange kid that I started job shadowing like wedding planners when I was in junior high because I really wanted to be a wedding planner. And then I did it in high school, and then I did a ton of internships in college, and I expanded a little bit. I worked with wedding planners. I worked at a golf club as in the catering department to kind of figure out like if I liked more corporate events. I also worked at like a nonprofit to kind of feel out if I liked nonprofit events, but I knew I loved event planning. And over the time that I would ask about like, how did you propose? And I just liked hearing people's stories. And so that eventually kind of clicked where I realized there weren't really good resources out there for proposing. Like there was a ton of wedding planners out there, but there was really no one. Well, there wasn't anyone doing proposal planning, but there was a lot of searches for marriage proposal help. So I figured there had to be something there. I just didn't know exactly what it would look like since I didn't have an example or anything. It kind of, which made it fun because I got to kind of just get creative with it. And,
Yeah.
but I still kind of set it up like wedding packages, but proposal packages.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is wild because my big thing is Reddit. I'm on Reddit all the time. It's where my business blew up. And I see proposal videos that pop up all the time. And I'm always kind of in there telling about the rules, which we're going to get to in a sec, where you see a proposal done. There's one that came up where there was an eagle, they were at like an animal show and an eagle flew up, right, and had like the will you
Yeah,
marry me? And I'm like, that is
yeah.
awesome. But please do yourself a favor and make sure that she wants to be proposed to in front of a crowd. That's one of the big
I
things.
totally saw that one. I just saw that one. That's so funny.
Yeah, there have been some amazing ones with the person that animated, right, the end of the Disney movie. I'm sure every
Yeah.
time one goes viral, you get like 19 people that forward it to you. Yeah, I know. I get all of those same things with like National Treasure and the game and
Yeah,
all of these immersive scavenger hunts. So let's
that's funny.
bring it into kind of the brass tacks. I would love to hear just your favorite types of proposals. I'm happy to talk about your favorite proposal and actual stories, but I know there are different types, and I don't know if you have any
Hmm.
specific. If you have your list where mine's like you have public or private or in between, like you have
Yeah.
this type of thing. So can you talk a little bit about just some of the favorite types that you like to run or recommend for your proposers?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, when I started the company, I really wanted to focus on it being about the couple. So, I would say I'm still very adamant about that. And I just feel like proposals end up being a lot more thoughtful, and the reaction is even more genuine and just excited when things are thought out in that way. So, I would say my favorite proposals are definitely ones that are uh, more creative. I do love creative proposals versus like the insert here scenario. So what we kind of call it is like insert here proposals would be like a marry me sign with red rose petals. Like a lot of people could just step into that scenario. But if you were to make it about her favorite flowers or a custom quote on a sign, like that speaks to your relationship, right? So one of my big do's with every proposal that we work on is to make sure that there's some sort of like custom element. It's not to say marry me sign is bad. You can still have that, but still have like those thoughtful pieces that really speak to your individual love story.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fantastic. Yeah, that
yeah, so
may,
that's kind of like our number one. I feel like that's kind of the heart of the Yes Girls. I'm also very practical, like have a really great location. If it's a meaningful one, that gives you extra points. But obviously nowadays, everyone wants to get like photos of it, which I highly, highly recommend to capture the moment. And so really having like a beautiful location that can be indoors or outdoors. But speaking of, because weather is always a factor, to consider having like a backup indoor plan if it is kind of during that season.
yeah.
So a lot of people want to like propose outdoors, but then if there's no indoor option, that can cause a lot of stress on
Yes.
someone who is already very nervous.
Absolutely. And I run into the exact same thing where it's like we need contingency after contingency after
Yeah,
contingency, and we're F5ing weather.com the week leading up just every hour. We're like, okay,
yep,
60%
yep,
chance of rain, 50. And it's like, I either want
yes.
100% chance of rain or I want zero. Don't give me
It's
50.
so, it's so true because then you're like, I don't want to chance it, but then they don't. It's yeah, it's a whole thing. Weather is definitely always the big like what if, right? In California, we get really good weather most of the time, but we
Right now.
experienced this last week where we had three clients like it's
Hail.
gonna rain, and we had to come up with a backup plan because they didn't really think that it would, and we're like, we told you it
I know.
could. Yeah,
It's so tricky because you have to commit to so many things in advance to make it work, right? You're booking a photographer, which good photographers aren't cheap, and they aren't, like, oh yeah, I'll just swing by this Saturday in spring
yeah,
yeah, you have to
yes,
book months in advance. It's the same
yeah,
thing with me is what, pandemic aside, it was like a 6 month thing. And so people would want to. The nice thing about proposals is they usually can happen anytime versus like an
yeah,
anniversary, which like kind of
yes,
stick a date.
yes,
Um, but yeah, it's there are so many contingencies. But it sounds like something I harp on is this is just such an exercise in extreme thoughtfulness. It's great to go on and get inspiration and figure out what what you might want to do based on what other people want to do. But I do love the idea of take the formula, the marry me sign with the rose petals, and pivot over to something slightly different to
Yeah,
your relationship, right? Like
yeah,
which can work. Um,
exactly.
are there any types of proposals, and I can name a couple in my opinion, that are your least favorite or that you're like, just don't do, like,
I think, I mean, honestly, and this is probably like a personal
yeah,
opinion on this, so this is like people might totally disagree with me, but
that's
I'm not
okay.
really one into like freaking your girlfriend or boyfriend out for that
Yeah,
matter, like out right before where you're kind of putting him in like a scared or bad mood. I
yeah,
just feel like that's not necessarily like the most romantic tone. I think there's times to like play pranks on people. I love a good prank. I don't feel like the proposal is like necessarily the best time for a prank. I feel like I've seen a ton where it's like he just like falls off the building, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you like are gonna give her a heart attack right
yeah,
before you propose, and like that's so many emotions in a matter of like 1 minute.
yeah. I agree with you. One of the things I always tell people is like you like there are risks you can take. Take like conservative
Yeah,
risks, but there
yeah,
are those big things. I mean, it's unfortunate because you see like prank videos are so popular on YouTube, and
totally.
I'm always trying to figure out like how can I get more subscribers? And people are like prank videos. I'm like I'm not going to prank anybody. Like A, it's not my brand, and B, I kind of hate them because maybe I'm just like a slightly older millennial, and so I just missed the prank scene. But yeah, where it's like this is like probably one of the more stressful days of your life proposing. Like you
Yeah,
don't need to add this extra stress on of like wondering how they're going to react to your thing. To
totally.
piggyback with that, one of the things I always talk about is the surprise should not be that you're proposing. The surprise should be how you're proposing. Where you
That's
get a
true.
lot of people, and I've turned down. I want to know if you've
Yep.
ever had to turn anybody down, but I've turned down
Yeah.
a couple clients
Mhm.
where the first question I ask is like, is there a world where he or she would say no? And
Yep.
if there's a little pause, because every once in a while there is, I'm like, how long have you been dating? And they're like, six
Yep.
months. And I'm like, please come back in a year. I'm not saying 6 months relationships don't lead to happy marriages, but statistically, like, you don't want to spend the money and the time and do all this if you're not
Sure.
100% sure they're going to
Yep.
be, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to put in like whether you're hiring a planner or not, or one like or doing your service like the scavenger hunt or anything elaborate. Like even if you are doing that or not doing that, it's like the conversation should be had before to make sure you guys are on the same page.
yeah,
So I completely agree with that. No pranks. I like that, Megan.
yes,
I feel like the other thing for me again, and I know it's like comes with like the job and the territory, but I have seen a lot of scenarios where, well, two things. One, they kind of make it more about them, which I feel like kind of falls in the prank category where they just want to make it more about what they like and they don't really
yes,
consider what their partner would want, which I think falls under like doing a public display if she's more of like an introvert or things like that, like considering family involvement. And then the other thing is like when they just wing it. I feel like I hear this a lot. Well, if I can just like, I'm going to do it when it feels right. I just feel like you're being lazy.
yeah. It's like you're scared. And I'll have times where I'm out and about running a proposal adventure, and of course, like I get a lot of guys that I'm like, "Thanks, Chris. You're really just this is going to be great. You set this bar high." But I have
Totally.
people where they're like, "Wow, I was proposed to in the bathroom in the house that we share," and
Totally.
it was like, "Oh man, like you couldn't at least like wait till this." And they're not to say like this is never the things that we say are never like across the board. There is
Yes.
somebody out there that wants to be pranked and proposed to, right? There's somebody out
That's
there,
true.
but
Yeah.
odds are it's not your significant other, and they'll
Yeah.
tell you, right?
Yeah.
You want to do
That's,
that.
yes. Unless you guys literally like prank each other on the daily, it is literally
Yes,
like the life to your relationship, then yes,
yes,
in that
yeah,
scenario, like have at it, your heart's desire. But like if you very rarely prank each other, like, why would you choose that
Yeah.
for?
Yeah. My other caveat too, and I harp on this a lot, and this is my least favorite type of proposal. It's at sporting events like baseball
No,
games, because it
yeah,
popped up recently. There was the thing on Reddit that was like, here's how much it costs to propose at all the major sporting events. And my thing that I always tell people is like, the only time you should ever propose at a sporting event is if you A, met at the sporting event, B,
yep,
this team has had a huge part of both of your lives, right? You grew up huge fans, you met at the sporting event, you go to all the games, like that makes sense. But like,
yeah,
I dated a girl who had previously been proposed to at a sporting event, and she was like, I don't care about baseball. Like, why?
totally.
Like, what?
Yeah,
Now I just have like, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people watching me get proposed to at a place where it's like, cool, baseball's fun. Like, I like going to games, but like,
yeah.
you know,
And
so
like she probably is like, I would have liked the beach or something. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. And I
exactly.
agree. My husband's cousin, they are huge, huge Dodger fans. For her husband to
Oh,
propose with
congratulations.
the Dodgers involved, totally made sense for them. But
Yes.
like for me, who like, sure, I'll watch the game with you, but I'm not like die hard. Like that wouldn't have made no sense
Yeah.
to me at all. And we've done a few where they're very adamant about wanting to propose at a stadium or something. So we usually rent out like the dugout or a private box, and so we at least still make it very intimate and private. And it usually was because they were just both diehard
Yeah.
fans. They met there, was one of the scenarios. So we usually try to still make it like intimate, because those are my favorite
Yeah.
types of proposals. And I feel like most of our clients coming are probably in that category where they want something a little bit more intimate and creative, versus something super public. Not to say we haven't done like, the big public things, but especially right now going on, like you can't do a
There are no
big
big
public
public things.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love it. I did a blog post where I talked about there's like super public, which is sporting event, somewhat public, which is like a beach where it's like you can't reserve most
Yeah,
beaches, so you're just kind of doing it, and then like
yeah,
super private, which is like back room at a restaurant or your own house or like a private somewhere private. And
yeah,
I always spring for the private because
yeah. You have
just less
control over
risk.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't have
totally.
control, and you have times where it's like we're gonna do this beautiful park, and you get there and like a homeless camp is set up there in the last week, and you're like, oh no, like we need a new
Yeah, yeah,
spot, right?
totally. Yeah, there's so many like different factors. And when you can rent out a space, and there's a lot of like, there's cool rooftops you can rent out. There's even like really cool Airbnbs we've used in different cities. So I feel like there's always different options depending on your budget that you
Yeah.
can find that
Okay.
would still give you privacy.
I have a question from chat. I actually have a
Okay.
couple question from chat. I have a lot of people that were like, "Yep, no pranks." Like, thank you, Taylor. Wholeheartedly
Yeah.
agree. And so the question is, I popped this up very high up. How do you respond when someone asks their girl if their girlfriend will mind them using a proposal planner or quote unquote doing it themselves? And I've got
Mm.
an answer for this too, since I've been able to see this for the last 10 minutes. If you want me to go first,
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I
yeah.
would love to hear
I
what
actually
you
have
tell them.
this right now, and this is with. I don't think it's a proposal. It's actually with like it's an anniversary present. And for me, I'm like, you need to make sure she knows it's not a proposal because if you're doing this elaborate treasure scavenger hunt,
Yeah,
and it's not a proposal, you need to spell that out pretty early on so they don't get excited or scared that it's happening.
that's
Um,
so true.
yeah, I have a lot of people reach out, and some want me to just do the whole thing, right? And
Hmm.
most of the time, when I build these, it's a collaboration where it's like there's a lot of surveys, there's back and forth. Sometimes
Yeah,
the gentleman who hires me, or I've actually only ever been hired by a gentleman, but equal opportunity. But the person who hires me wants to be like behind the scenes running the show with me, like planting a wax sealed envelope somewhere, like working with this so they get some control over it.
right.
But it's okay. It's okay to want to DIY it, but there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Even just like calling you guys, we're going to talk later about the 20-minute consultation. Like, that's okay. Just being like, here's my idea. Let me run it by somebody who
Sure.
has
Yeah.
done this 3,000 times to make
Totally.
sure that there's not a huge blind spot that they're aware of. Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think the funny thing too, it's like a lot of the times, and I know you have experienced this too, with like if they're traveling, especially, it's like you can't sneak away realistically and set something like really beautiful and thoughtful up if that's the direction they're trying to go without it being like a really big tell. Like someone has to set it
Yeah.
up, right? And so in terms of like the proposal idea itself, like you said, it's a huge collaboration. We have them fill out a relationship questionnaire. So it's really about the couple. And so all of the information is essentially coming from and the couple's love story. It's just a matter of bringing that to life. And we just, try to help and make it come together in a more aesthetically beautiful, pleasing way.
Yes.
So I feel like most of the time, I almost feel like it used to be even a bigger issue like 5 years ago, where guys were like, because a majority of our clients are males, and they'd be like, can you not post about it? Can you not tell her I use someone? And I think nowadays it's just it's really obvious, like how someone had to have set this up for you. Yeah. So it's okay, like own that you cared and that you put effort into it. Yeah. I think it's just turning the script around a little bit and just owning it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I always say with any types of events is like when you're running an event, there always has to be somebody that isn't having a good time. It doesn't matter what it is. There's somebody that has to be like doing damage control and putting out fires. And like that's why when you're getting married, you hire a wedding planner even a day of, because like they're going to be the one shuffling away like your drunk uncle who got too drunk that wants to give a second speech. And like you don't want to have to do that. You're proposing. You have a huge thing ahead of you. It's okay to ask for help. Like guys, it's okay to ask for help, even if it's just like a bunch of friends that are just helping set things up, right? It doesn't have to be a planner or a professional, but like get somebody. But I can tell you.
Yeah, so talk logistics, really work out through the details to make sure you're not overlooking anything.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Just like people hire wedding planners, like you said. I considered it the same exact thing. Like, just because someone hires a wedding planner doesn't take away from their wedding. Yeah. It just made it better.
Yeah, exactly. So like take the thought, and it's kind of preconceived notion of some people, you have a lot of men that think they need to do everything themselves, right? And it's nice to see that kind of shift changing, that masculinity shift changing of just like asking for help in all factors of life, but also potentially one of the biggest days of your life, and that is this proposal. I got another question from Chris, who's an awesome regular, who's talking about his proposal and how it kind of went wrong and contingency. So he said, I'm going to bring it up real quick. Oh gosh, I need to make this a little smaller. He said, I proposed to my wife while we were on vacation, but things were spoiled a bit because she got sick on the big day. She still said yes, but what contingencies could I have planned to work around this? Whew, that is tough. Because there's just luck. There's luck involved with events. And sometimes like stuff goes wrong. And I guess it just depends on watch what you eat the night before or leading up to it. It's one of those where sometimes you could just, hey, we need to just postpone it. I had a gentleman who hired me to consult, and it was in California, and he was going to drive down and he was going to do a COVID safe couple stops, like pick up this meal, go to this picnic with friends, and then California shut down. And he just had to postpone it, and then changed it to something around the house and in the backyard. And so I think if it doesn't feel right, go with your gut. It's okay if you lose a little bit of money, if you need to reschedule or push something back or do that. Most people, I think, would work with you. But there is just bad luck sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. In that scenario, I mean, there's not a lot you could have avoided. That's just kind of an unfortunate situation. But I think, like you said, being able to postpone it and like reschedule. We have had scenarios where they want to like push it forward because something happens. And a lot of the times we're like, no, like we got to push it back, not forward. There's too many factors that could go wrong all of a sudden where you're trying to like push it forward last minute. So that's something we kind of joke a lot of the times. We have to be like half therapist, half proposal planner because you're just trying to talk through all the like nerves and emotion with them. But like in this scenario, I don't think there's a lot you could have done.
Yeah. I'm going to keep piling questions on with chat because they're very active. I promised you I wouldn't ask you this, but unfortunately my wonderful dad decided to ask you this. How were you proposed to? How did that proposal? Thank you, Dad. Great question. I'm glad you're asking it so I don't have to, but
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. No, I'm just kidding. We were joking earlier that like, what are the questions that everyone always asks me? And that's always a question.
I want to make the conversation fun for you. And I do the same questions. And I know that but you got to answer it now. So sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. So my husband, he used to be in the Air Force, and so at the time he was in Columbus, Mississippi for pilot training, and there's not a lot to do around Columbus, Mississippi. So he came up with like the ruse to visit a friend. When I came out, we went and visited a mutual friend who was in Pensacola, so it was like more along the beach. He had wanted to propose at the beach because that's kind of like what we did the first time we started hanging out that initial summer. And so he had, I laughed too, because this is why you have to consider all the different factors with timeline, right? So he proposed on the beach, and then he did a really good job. Like he had my favorite flowers and drinks, and he made sure that like I even had like my favorite dessert, and there was like just things set up in the room after for the surprise. But I always give him a hard time because our friend set that up when he went and took me down to the beach to propose, and the camera was sitting like right there. And our friends texting him like, I can see you, good luck, all this stuff. And I'm like, you watched the whole thing. Why didn't you just pick up the camera and take a picture? And I
Oh no.
still die like laughing, but this is why I'm like, this is why I have a job.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so it was really romantic, and it was really it was special to us. But I laugh because I also prolonged like the sunset hour because we had been out in the sun all day, and so I was tired. I never order coffee, and I decided to order a cup of coffee after dinner. And he was like, oh, okay. Like, can you want to get it to go? Like, can we walk? And I'm just taking my time. I'm like enjoying dinner. I look out the window. There was like a ceremony wrapping up on the beach. I'm like, oh my gosh, how beautiful the wedding. And of course, like I loved weddings. So I'm like watching it. He's like, oh my gosh, Heather, like finish up. So I actually, that's one of my big things is from even my own experience is plan for dinner after you propose, not beforehand. Because it's too, you don't know how long the food's gonna take and all of that stuff. So, but it was very memorable and super fun, and he planned a lot of fun activities for us to do during that time. And I was appreciative as much as we had fond memories in Mississippi. I'm glad he proposed on the beaches of Florida.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's fantastic. And you have a team. It's not just you at the Yes Girls, correct?
Yes,
How
yes, I
many?
have
How
a
many?
fantastic team.
How
There's
many
five of
people?
them.
Is it all ladies?
It is.
Oh,
It
that's
is.
awesome. All female in
Yeah.
business. Were you just
Mhm.
like, hey, did you ever think about just like checking in with the other four, just to like, see if they would help out or anything like that?
They were not because I he actually proposed before I even had started
Oh,
the
oh, oh,
company.
oh,
So I
oh.
was like in the works of actually wanting to start my wedding planning company. And then the proposal thing had kind of come to mind as I was starting the wedding side, realizing that because Kyle, who is my husband now, because obviously I did say yes,
Yes.
um,
Congratulations.
when back then he was in the Air Force, and so we were going to move every few years, and I realized I was going to get really annoyed every time I had to restart up shop wedding planning, since it is so regionally based. So it ended up being this like little blessing because it kind of pushed me into trying more of the proposal because I could do it across the country and more remotely. So it ended up kind of being this nice thing, even though initially I was so bummed out because I really thought I wanted to do specifically weddings.
Yeah. I think proposals are more fun because I don't know, you're dealing, in the case of the proposal adventures, I'm dealing with somebody, the proposee who's getting proposed to, doesn't see it coming. So it's like it's all just like as long as it's fine, like there's not the expectations aren't there that you have with weddings where you have like the bride and the groom and the bride's parents and the groom's parents and like all these people have these crazy expectations that
A
poor
very
wedding
long
planners.
timeline.
Yes, where yours is
Yep.
just like super quick. All right, I'm going to tee up a question that I think I already know the answer to, but I love it anyway.
Okay.
And this one's a little off the cuff. So, the problem that I tend to run into is when it comes to wedding planning, girls are all about it. They've already got the Pinterest boards, they've already been like looking this up. But when it comes to proposals, a lot of guys don't even know that there's help, right? They just don't know that
Uh-huh.
this exists. And
Right.
how do you get how do you get people to find you?
That's a good question. Funny enough, Most of them still come from Google. I think they feel very safe. I would say word of mouth, like from past clients talking. But I have this theory that some clients don't like to share it because they want to make sure their proposal is the best, so they kind of like keep it in their back pocket a little bit. I'm like, no, please share with your friends.
Yeah.
That's more of a joke. But like, I do think, honestly, as amazing as social media can be for business, and I think it's a good way for like us to share our portfolio and our work and like kind of the luxury style that we create for clients. Most of them will still come through Google. I think it feels like a very safe place for them. You know,
How to
is
propose.
probably
Yeah.
how I see it.
Well, one of the things that this is teeing up is I found a thing on your website that I am absolutely going to steal, and it's like drop a hint where they can literally put in they can fill out a submission for
Yeah.
you guys to reach out later and be like, hey, just throwing it out there, like your girlfriend wants you to
Uh-huh.
propose, and like put it on our website. And I'm going to do that for adventures because I get a lot of people that hire me because they want something, right? They're like, oh, I'm doing something for my like kids or wife or business partner, but
Sure.
like as I get through this, I'm like, they are way more excited, like they want something like this. And so I just
For
thought that was
sure.
such a little
Yeah, you gotta
stroke
do
of
that.
brilliance.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and the funny thing is too, it's like especially around like after the holidays, it went up like crazy. Like we
Yeah.
get multiple submissions a day now. Like we've had that forever, like the wink wink system.
Yeah.
But it really like got very popular, I feel, the last few months. And I'm not sure if that's because like people are just like itching for like something after this whole last year or what. But yeah, I would highly recommend that because that totally makes sense to like why they're reaching out. They want that themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's a fun way for us to kind of give them a subtle hint. We drop one email. We don't send multiple because we don't want to ever overstep and like we're not sure how he feels. So
Yes.
you know, we just give a little, here's a little something, some
Yeah.
tips for you, some ideas, and then he can take and do what he wants with it. And I say he because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
95% of the time
We
it's
say he
a
because it's
male.
easier, but we are all very open and inclusive,
Yeah,
and all of
sometimes it's
that.
males, yeah, or
Yes.
females, but most of the time it's males.
Yep. Okay, so I actually have two people asked basically the same question, so I'm going to pop them both up here, and it's thoughts
Yeah.
about proposal at a restaurant or at dinner. Megan's actually had a lot of airtime here, so we're going to keep Taylor up here.
Okay. No, that's a good question, Taylor. So proposal at a restaurant. We have done them, but we don't do them publicly. I feel like that was like what, 20 years ago?
Yep.
Like that's how grandparents would
Yep.
propose or even my parents. I mean, I guess my response to this always is like, have you planned a more romantic date than going to a restaurant? Chances are,
So good.
yes, yes, probably so, right? And so I just feel like, again, with something like a proposal, an anniversary, like things that are like really special, especially a proposal, where you're doing it like you get one shot at it kind of thing. It's like why not do it in the most thoughtful way? And I just feel like a restaurant is something like kind of everyone's go-to date night, right?
Yep.
So it just kind of seems like not the best. But that being said, we have had some clients where they're like really big foodies or something. And
Yes.
so we'll do like a private chef in the back room, like something like that. I feel like that's a very different, you know, yes, exactly what Abigail just
Abigail.
said.
Yeah.
Like,
Private
yep,
dinner.
private dinner, exactly.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that a little bit, for me, it's always about just like think about the risk. One of my rules you can see in my other video of like my top 10 rules to scavenger hunt, like treasure scavenger hunts, is like you want to take like specific risks with contingencies. And when you're doing something in a restaurant, you have like, let's think of the worst possible scenarios. Like you get down on one knee and like the person at the table over starts choking on like their steak they're eating. And now it's like someone needs to Heimlich and you have that, right? Or you're also potentially relying on like a server who could just be like some high school kid who doesn't
Totally.
care. And like
Yes.
restaurants are just so like there's so much going
Hmm.
on. There's so many moving pieces. I'm very
Yeah.
buttoned up when it comes to even utilizing restaurants for treasure scavenger hunts.
Hmm.
It can be done, and this goes same thing with like doing it at a baseball game. Like if it makes sense, it works. but don't just do a restaurant because you've seen people put the ring in a champagne glass and they drink it and they're the music crescendo during that
Yeah.
1950s movie and
Because
you cry.
every TV show shows you doing the same thing.
Yes. Oh, these questions are great. By all means, keep them coming. One of the things, and oh, I had a great. It's not, somebody keeps stealing my questions. I have them like keyed up, ready to go, and people are
Oh,
asking me
great.
about it. Oh, Megan, you are just the best. I need you for every single interview that I do. How has the pandemic affected your business and your creativity and your life? Like, what happened mid March? And hit me with that story if you're okay talking about it.
Yeah, no, I think, well, I'm totally okay talking because I always think it's just important to be real and like share stories so we help each other out, right? Like as small business owners and everything. But yeah, March was rough because obviously we had proposals planned that we had to put a halt to or postpone because we're not sure when you can go to that venue or whatever it was. So March was rough. We had to get really creative with like we did like quarantine date nights and really try to help people get creative while they were like stuck at home. I would say March and April we were like really coming down together as a team, like let's get creative, what can we do, what can we focus on, but like in terms of even like our product with like box sock, which is the
Yeah,
sock that hides
that
the ring
next.
box, like that normally is a really big like a big seller for us because people are like traveling all over, they want to hide the ring box, but if you're going to propose in your house, you don't need to wear socks, like you're literally the ring's probably in your drawer.
Yes.
So it was definitely rough. Like obviously had never experienced something like that since even just like starting the company, but then it was just me that I had to worry about, so having to take care of a team, I was really really adamant about keeping everyone on, and so we just put on our working boots and got to work to get creative. And I will say I was very very thankful, and this is just being like lucky that we're in the smaller event space where we do plan like intimate things. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure you kind of felt like this too. I mean, I know you couldn't travel anymore, but the fact that we were setting up events for 2 people, business picked up a lot faster because we weren't having to accommodate like 150 people for a wedding. We could rent out a private space, have vendors go set up safely ahead of time, and then like leave, and then the couple show up. So yeah, we've definitely had proposals where they show up in their masks, and then once they're up there, they can take it off and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so thankfully, we haven't had anyone get sick. We did have a client get it before his proposal, so we had to postpone it,
Oh,
which was a big bummer. But he was okay, so that was
that's
a
good.
good thing.
Yeah, that's the most important part. Um,
Yeah.
okay, that I do want to segue to like the best shameless plug we could possibly do, and these are the box socks. I
Oh,
have a picture up just because it's like it perfectly goes in. This is something you
yeah.
can get. It's something I just discovered, but basically they are socks that you can wear that will hide the ring box, which is such a huge thing because like having that ring traveling and you hear the horror stories of somebody getting
Yes.
stopped in the airport and TSA like opens up and pulls out the ring and they just like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna propose in the middle of the airport because like cat's out
Yes.
of the bag. But that's kind of a
Yes.
great way because like I don't trust pockets. I don't ever trust
Yeah.
pockets. And
Mm-mm.
I
Mm-mm.
was telling you this story before we got started, but my very first proposal, literally titled like Adventure Number 9, The Proposal, where everything else has had their own name. I did like a nesting doll, but with treasure chests. So it's like she started with this
Yeah.
giant treasure chest, and then when her and her sister got it open, there was a smaller treasure chest, and it kind of sent around to all the places that were meaningful to the relationship. And then it ended up top on the highest point in San Diego where he was holding the key to the final box. And so he literally like opened up the box and pulled out the ring and made her carry on her ring all day. But the night before, I have this $10,000 ring in my pocket, and
Yeah.
me and my assistant at the time like stopped by the grocery store to pick up like a couple like of her favorite food to put in like the third chest, and I'm
Yeah.
walking around with my hand in my pocket gripping this ring just like like I didn't pull
Totally.
my
That's
phone
a lot
out.
of pressure.
Yes.
That's
And
a
so
lot of pressure
I
on you.
just think that's such a cute, like brilliant, incredible idea. of like a way to carry around that thing until the very last second, like when you're just like, cool, I'm going to get this thing out, I'm going to do it. So
Totally. Well,
yeah.
it really came from kind of like you're saying, almost experience of where clients were like, okay, and then final question, like how, like where should I hide the ring box? And we kept being like, make sure it's a thinner ring box, or like make sure instead of hiding it, and we actually would tell them to hide it in their sock before we created box sock,
Yeah.
because we felt like it was a safe, it's like your significant other is not going to be like feeling up your ankles, but
Yeah.
like they might try to stick their hand in your pocket or like hold your hand because their hands are cold in their jacket. And so it felt like that's like there's too many variables with that. And a lot of the times, if you're wearing tighter pants, it's like real obvious.
Yes, I know. Fashion's
So
a
like,
thing. You want to look good.
Ring bulge is a real thing.
Are you happy to see me, or is that a ring in your pocket? I guess the
Yeah,
answer
exactly,
is yeah.
exactly. It's like pretty obvious. So that kind of, it came from actually the request of clients always asking, and then it dawned on us like, oh my gosh, why haven't we actually created a cool,
Yeah.
like different, a different sock, and so we have different patterns
Oh,
for
it's so brilliant. I would honestly get them, like, if I don't think I'd want to get ones that say "marry me" because I'm in no state to get married, but just like hold stuff, like I've traveled to
totally.
other countries and run adventures. Like you put money in
Yes.
socks,
No, totally. Actually, that's so funny. One of my good friends bought them because he travels down to like Mexico a lot, and he just wanted to have like cash on hand and like a secret stash. So he
Yeah,
does that.
that is absolutely hilarious, and I love every second of that. I only have like one or two more questions. I would love if you just have a quick laundry list of like do's and don'ts when you're starting planning. I just, like I have my top 10 lists in my list, and I know I've seen you do like, here's three things to remember.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh
yeah,
gosh,
if
yeah.
you could just rattle off some of those, and caveat, you have a 4-month-old, and so you are running on no sleep, and you are crushing this, and I really appreciate it. So thank you
That's
for
very
joining
that's
with me. Oh man, it's great. So
oh, that's very nice. Yes, I have a three kiddos now, but the 4-month-old is the one that obviously
yes,
doesn't let me sleep through the night quite yet. So
yeah,
but yeah, so list of the do's and don'ts. I would say it's funny enough with this question, because I feel like a lot of the times, instead of asking like what you should do, a lot of the times people ask like what not to do to screw up the proposal. Like they're more concerned about screwing it up, I would say,
hmm,
than like what to do. So I
yes,
would say some of the things we say like not to do to help avoid, ruining it, so to speak. One we already talked about is like where to hide the ring box so it's not really obvious and blows the surprise. So we use box lock for that. Another thing is timeline. I know we talked about this before too. It's like that's a huge one. Making sure, we always say like a lot 30 extra minutes in your timeline just for things like a vendor going like being late because they can't find the spot, or if she's running late, because that happens, like it's a lot easier to kill time than it is to make up time. So that's a big one. And that can be kind of like one of the bigger factors. I would say with location, we touched on this earlier, but kind of having your backup plan with weather, that's always a big factor. And then obviously the big one for us is making sure, well, two more. I would say having the ruse be something believable. So if you're not someone that typically plans date nights and then all of a sudden you plan something, it's a pretty big giveaway, right? So I would say involving like a friend or maybe getting a couple things on the calendar. So it's not
decoy
quite
date
as obvious.
nights.
Yeah, like just keep her guessing a little bit. Because it's funny when like someone that doesn't typically plan things all of a sudden has like a very strict timeline. It's like,
Yeah,
why are you being so
very
weird about this?
obvious.
Right?
Yeah,
It's like an obvious dead giveaway. So I feel like that's kind of a good indication. And then honestly, the last thing, I just don't think you can go wrong if you make it personal. Like any attempt to make it thoughtful is going to speak way louder than something that's like kind of cheesy and cliche. And I'm not saying cheesy is bad, because some girls love cheesy, but like still add in the personalization, because that's what really makes it
yeah.
unique to like your love story, because no two people's love story is like yours. So you might as well like live into that and enjoy it. And so that would be my like for sure do, is just to make it personal and about them. What would you say? I'm
Yeah,
curious.
so no, I agree. Mitigate risk, get help, just have extra people. I always have somebody that I hire
Mhm.
the day of who has no job, and granted, mine are like, 10 stop actors involved, stuff like that.
Sure.
But it's like your job is to be there if something disastrous happens. And like, I need like, a great example. I did one, I think
Yeah.
it was for an anniversary, where they were sent up to the the top of the Space Needle in Seattle, and they had to
Okay.
look through one of the viewfinders, and they had to find somebody sitting in this like basically an area with like these yellow umbrellas. It was like a picnic spot, and then find that agent.
Cool.
Right, they had to go. A really cool experience. And I went and scouted the day before. Everything's fine. The day of, we arrive, and there was like a construction team that had taken down. It was red umbrellas. That was the thing, and the umbrellas were gone. The patio had been cleared out, and so we're like, oh my gosh. So I sent my assistant like, I need you to go to every single Target, Walmart, and just buy a bunch of red umbrellas. And we
Oh
got
my
three or
God.
four actors that were already there early, and all of them were like walking there with red umbrellas, and like it saved that kind of piece. So having
Yeah.
somebody there, which like best case scenario, they just kind of hang out. But worst case scenario,
Yeah.
like they can run and grab a glass of water, right? They can do these little things so you don't
Totally.
have to worry about it. One of the things I like
Yep.
to caveat with that is it's okay for things to go wrong, right? Like it's never that big of a deal, but also like it adds more fun. You talk about like the little thing of like, why didn't you have the photo? It's a hilarious thing,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
When like somebody gets down on one knee and like tips over a little bit and gets back up, like, yeah, it doesn't make for the perfect video, but like that's what they remember. They remember
Totally.
seeing
Of
you in the
course.
bushes at stop number 3 after you put the envelope in and knowing something's up. Like they
Yeah.
remember, even if you're not a planner and all of a sudden you've planned this thing and you're like, we need to finish dinner right now, like it adds to a funny
That's true.
story.
It's true.
And so like it's okay to like let yourself off the hook, and you're marrying the love of your life,
Enjoy
they
it.
should be
Enjoy it.
accepting your faults and problems too.
Yeah.
But there's nothing
I
wrong with
think
trying to
I
make
do.
it work.
I agree. All those like little things that like all the little quirks and stuff.
Yeah.
Because again, if you've attempted to plan anything nice, they're gonna know that. And so the intent is there. It's not like you're screwing up because you just winged it and didn't have any sort of game plan, right? I
Yes.
think that is a much worse scenario because it just doesn't show any sort of effort.
Yeah.
But if you're showing effort and something goes wrong,
Yeah.
that's life and it makes for a good story.
And you can always do a redo proposal. I've done one. You've done countless. My first like proposal adventure was a redo proposal because he winged the first one, and on the 1 year anniversary, he wanted to do it
You
right.
wanted to
And
redo it. I love that.
yeah,
Yes. Those are always my favorite. Like we've had a few where it's like kind of similar. Like he didn't really technically ask, or like they were together for like 20 years and ended up just kind of getting married. So on their 20th anniversary, he actually proposed again. Like it's super cute stuff and not always makes for, those are my favorite.
yeah, those are a lot of fun. So, last question I always like to ask before we get to like the shameless plugs, more shameless plugs, but just like where do people find you? And this is a very broad question that you can kind of answer however you like, but it's just what have you learned? And this can be about proposing events. This could be about business. It could be about life. Like, just what have you learned? And I'm going to bring you up solo here so you can answer that however you like.
Oh my gosh, that's such like a big question, right? Because there's like so many things that I've learned. I would say like right now, maybe just because of my stage of life, like being a mom, having a husband that travels for work, but then also running a business, like having the team, there's a lot of pressure to kind of like keep everything afloat and moving. And I think that when I became a mom, there's like this false, this I don't even know what to call it because of my lack of sleep, but like there's this false thing out there that it's like, oh, you can just like do it all and you can like it's just you can have the perfect balanced like work life, motherhood, the whole thing. And the best thing that I learned early on was that one, that's not true, and it's about priorities. So there's some weeks where I find that like my kiddos really need me, and so I have to do something with work that like goes on the back burner because something comes up with them that they need to be the priority. And of course my kids are always my priority, but like in terms of like we're launching something for work and it's going to take all hands on deck and my team really needs me, that's going to be a time where I'm getting more help with the kiddos because I need to really be there for my team. So I think the best thing I learned was like all about prioritizing different things versus this idea of like this perfectly balanced lifestyle. I just don't think that really exists.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's
yeah,
fantastic. I think
yeah.
the notion of perfectly balanced, everything
Thank
can, you can
you.
have it all.
Thank
And
you. I'm like, what's the word? I don't know the word because I'm tired.
just having three kids during a global pandemic would be ridiculous enough, but like one of them being
It
four
is.
months old has got to be insane. And I agree with that. You see things on social media, like even proposals, and you got to remind yourself that like you're watching everybody's highlight reel and you're comparing your blooper reel to it. And so
Totally.
having
Totally.
like seeing these gurus on Instagram that are like like you're not going to show the times where it's like you're trying to launch this product and your kid threw up on you and you're not like, hey, look everybody, look followers, I'm doing
Oh
this.
yeah.
So like it's
Oh yeah.
okay to be imperfect and have everything be imperfect and just juggle and prioritize. And I get it. Like you have three kids. There's gonna be times where you're like, honey, I need you to take these kids. I'm launching something, or like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Totally.
Yeah, it
Totally. And
doesn't
I
mean you
think
love them
that
any less.
no, for sure. And I think just being able, I think a lot of the times we call it like mom guilt. And I'm sure like there's dad guilt or different things too. But I feel like mom guilt's a pretty strong one out there from like
Yeah,
speaking to other women. And so I think that's really just, it was very helpful. It kind of like lets you breathe a little, gives yourself a little bit more grace. And then it's just like way more fun because then you're just like, okay, this is what I got going on today. And tomorrow it's going to look like this.
yeah,
There's just more flexibility in that
yeah.
versus like I have to 50% give like this much time today to this person and also this person and also this person and also this person. Like that's not realistic.
No, that's awful.
So
Um, cool. So the last but not least, if you are trying to plan something romantic or a proposal, one of the things that you're offering right now is a 20-minute consultation. Do you want to
yeah.
talk a little bit about the 20-minute consultation? Because I think that's pretty brilliant.
Yeah. Well, we realized obviously we have like our proposal packages set up, but with Valentine's Day coming up, and sometimes people have an idea like already ready to go, which I think is fantastic. They just need to kind of like hash out some of the logistics, make sure their timeline is lined up, make sure they're not missing anything. Sometimes it's to go over, like we kind of talked about, like some of the common mishaps that could happen, like in their plan, where we can kind of just listen to their plan and be like, oh, you could do it this way. I would recommend maybe flip flopping these
Yep.
two things. This might help you avoid this, like things like that. And so it's mainly to just kind of give them the confidence going into it, right? Like we just want to really make sure they're all like teed up and ready to go, have the best game plan, because sometimes it's just like flip flopping a few things, or maybe it's even adding like a personalized detail that they have in their pocket. They just don't even realize it's there. And so we can kind of help like, oh, why don't you throw this in and like this little custom piece? And it's like, it changes the entire thing. So
Yep.
that's kind of why it's a very quick consultation. Anyone can kind of give 20 minutes, right? But it'll really be, I think it's just so valuable because it is such a big moment. I would highly recommend it. And our planners are just so fantastic. So they'll give really excellent advice.
Perfect. And so, last but not least, where can people find you? What should they do next if they want to track you, follow you, request your services?
The best way is our website, which is theyesgirls.com. You'll find all of our services on there as well as our social media, but like on Instagram and even TikTok now is at the Yes Girls. But we're on Facebook as well and YouTube. But I would say definitely go to the website.
Yeah, website is beautiful and really fun to scroll through. And you can find all of these things in the show notes already. I'll double check just to make sure I didn't put anything. I don't think I put TikTok in there because I have TikTok. I downloaded it to grab the Constructed Adventures handle, and then I haven't done anything because I'm frankly just kind of afraid of TikTok.
I did the same thing, and then my team, thank goodness for my team, finally pushed me. They're like, "You got to get on there," and it's actually doing better than our Instagram, I have to say.
Oh, okay, I need to.
I would highly recommend trying it, especially with like what you do and
Yeah.
showing some of the videos with your adventures. I bet a lot of people would eat it up.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just like, oh God, I'm turning 35 in a week, and it's just like I can't start. I'm starting to sound like my
I get
dad,
it.
where it's like I can't learn another social media
I
platform.
totally get it. But you can do it. I did it. I'm right there with you in the age range. Like I was just like, fine, I'll do it. And it has been very entertaining, I have to say.
Oh, that's good. I'll check that out. Well, thank everybody for joining and being active, and this was fun. And Heather, thank you so much for,
Of
waking up from hopefully a nap, and then you can go back to a nap. And
course.
if you are looking to propose, definitely reach out to Heather. If you're looking to do an immersive treasure scavenger hunt, reach out to me. I'm currently not doing any live events until I get the arm jab. But if you are trying to plan something, I also do consult, and you can check out my YouTube channel for other things and other wonderful interviews with wonderful people. So until next time, happy adventuring and good luck being romantic. Valentine's Day's coming up, so figure it out.
Thank you so much.
Bye.